So Gunnar was mentioning Arthur, and actually I'm missing Arthur. Where is he? Yeah, he's back there. The DIT is always somewhere in the background. Arthur Toe. A couple of impressive films, I think, like Revenant.
Yeah.
Arthur, thank you for coming. What is a DIT? What do you do?
That's probably the question I get the most. Usually people, will ask what I do, but the shocking thing is when my close friends, my mom will say, so what exactly do you do? What does DIT stand for? And that's probably the most common question. And what I exactly do changes a lot. It changes from DP to DP. It changes based on the scenario of the production and the film itself, or the budget constraints or production constraints, or even location, and even what country you're in. So to me, being a DIT has always been adapting, but ultimately it's to protect the DP's vision from beginning to end. And I find that with digital, or at least the advent of digital, that has become more difficult to protect because so many people have an opinion now. So many people want to get their hands into the vision and the look, and so many people can change it. They can just tweak this or that, or jump in with this LUT or that look. And so, for example, on a movie, I'll see that, say, my monitor and all the monitors are calibrated a certain way. This is how the DP wants to see it. Then I might check in with the dailies on the iPad to make sure the director is seeing something the same thing. It's not much more contrasty or different. And then the projector that's being used to do a quick color DI is also matching. And that way, when they go through the whole process, they're looking at the same thing. I've seen scenarios where they'll develop a look on set, and then halfway through, there's this section where the director will say, I'm just going to do a quick edit on my own for 2 weeks. I'm just going to look at Rec 709 or something like that. Not a big deal. And then 2 weeks later, the director will say, I kind of like 709 now. I kind of want to stay with it. So in a way, it kind of, and then the DP is like, no, but what about all this stuff we talked about? And in a way, by minimizing all the new opinions and options that comes in, or by minimizing differences in monitor and projection, you don't introduce other looks and other ideas that might dilute what the vision is that the DP has. I find it's the same thing when you're editing something with a temporary music track. You start cutting with a temp track, thinking, I'm going to get a real score later, and then you go, I really like this temp track. And so you tell your sound guy, or the guy doing your score, can you make a song exactly like this temp track?
Or call the Rolling Stones and ask for the price.
Yes, or money. Yeah. So that's kind of I find the ultimate goal is to protect that vision. And so as far as my responsibilities go, that also changes for each DP. But for example, on set, I might do a live color grade. Like you'll see later, we'll load up a base LUT that we can kind of rely on from scene to scene, interior, exterior, day, night. And then we'll do grades, like we'll make some color looks to make something maybe warmer or more desaturated, or if it's a period thing, then DP might have an idea for that. Or it might be matching. Sometimes if you're doing 2, 3, 4 cameras and your filtration and something's just a little more green or a little more red, then you match across the board so your dailies colorist or the guy making all the dailies for the iPad knows which camera to trust. And so color grading on set is one of the main responsibilities. And again, every DP works differently. Some DPs say, don't you dare touch the color grading. Some DPs say, no, please match the cameras. So again, it has a lot to do with adapting.
So when is this happening? After the first take or before? Or do you test?
Usually on a movie, on a test, we'll make a few LUTs and kind of see which ones we can carry across as a show LUT and which ones will work for all our different scenarios, and kind of carries the general look so that if we're in a crazy run and gun situation and we can't color grade, then we can depend on the show LUT. We'll usually do that during the test. And then during day one, we'll make a few looks for each scene, but then we'll find our favorites very quickly. And kind of know which ones.
The show LUT is for the general film, for the complete film.
Yeah, so for the show LUT will be...
Does it really work? Have one LUT for one part of the film, let's say, one location?
It works for the most part. Either it'll be 2 LUTs to separate day and night or interior, exterior, or it'll be one show LUT that works for the whole. And I find a lot of times DPs will boil it down to about one show LUT so that's kind of the base they always work with. That ratio is always controlled. If that's the only thing that comes up on that monitor, the ratio between your highlight and dark side is something they can trust and something that they can light with. And so, from there we make color decisions. And
who's actually owning the LUT? Is it the DP or the DIT, or is it
ownership of the LUT?
Yes.
That depends on who the post house is and who made it with the DP, and then that gets into people saying, "No, this is my LUT. This is my LUT." People treat it like a secret sauce in a way. Like they say, "Oh, the insert movie title LUT. I want that one."
So the LUT is not only a technical transform from Log-C to Rec. 709, for example. It's including a creative look.
Well, if you boil it down, it really is just a technical number value, and that there really is no secret sauce LUT that will make your footage automatically look good. Sorry, there's no secret LUT. But if you trust it, then you're confident in your lighting, and then you trust your monitor, and there's no doubts as far as is this highlight going crazy. So it's a form of confidence, and it's also a form of keeping the look restrained within a certain boundary so that other people are not being introduced to things that dilute.
So what do you, actually, I forgot to ask Gunnar what gear he's using, so we have to talk about that later again. Yeah. But what gear are you using?
For the most part...
So how do you talk to the camera? If you're checking the exposure.
Yes, so that's another...
How do you adjust that? How do you do that?
So usually we'll have a handset that controls the iris of the camera. And again, many DPs work differently. A lot of DPs like to do the barrel on their own. A lot of DPs like to have me do the iris. It just depends, and I kind of adapt to it. But usually I'll have a controller, like a SXU1 or something that controls the iris motor. And I'll have a conversation ahead of time with the DP about, what stop do you want to stay at? And working with the gaffer and just seeing how the light situations change, we might revisit a conversation and say, hey, it's gotten brighter, it's gotten darker. Do you want to do this, or do you want the B-cam, which is on a much longer lens, to be on a deeper stop so your depth of field kind of matches? And so there's a lot of conversations that go on in terms of where we want to put the f-stop, and then we'll control it accordingly. And so that's the camera side of things.
So for the exposure setting on the camera, you use for example WCU4 or other products from other manufacturers.
Right.
So then if you create a LUT, you get the video signal obviously via a wireless or wire.
Right.
So we have the video, the monitor out as we see it here on your display. But then you have something, what do you use then for changing colors?
So for me personally, I use Pomfret's live grade software on the laptop. The laptop controls either a LUT box or now directly to the cameras, which is really nice. And then we'll put in the base LUT, and then we'll do a correction on top. And that correction is what's being sent over to post. So the post will always have the base LUT, and that correction file that we made for that scene, back then we used to just name it according to the scene or take, and hopefully they match it up. So in the DI, they can line everything up, and in color grading, you're already halfway there. You save a lot of time and money, ideally, in color DI. With this, direct to connect camera stuff you can do now, if we make a correction, it's saved into the metadata of that clip. So there's no need to make this whole log of, okay, this file is named scene 134, take 32, and then in take 33 it got brighter. There's none of that. Like, it just goes to the clip, so it minimizes a lot of the error when it comes to matching clips and whatnot, which is really nice.
So is the experience that when the DP comes in the color grading suite, we have a final cut and the film is conformed, and then he comes in and has a talk to the DI grader, are they then actually really using the work you have done already?
Yeah.
Or do they start anyhow from scratch?
Well, they'll usually go into the DI suite and then pull up the look file that we made on set for that scene, and the colors will say, all right, this is what you guys made on set. This is what I added to it because I'm in a perfectly closed environment. It's all blacked out. It's a projector. It's not like when we're running on set, so they can really dial it in. And then this is your scene from last week, A and B. Does it match? And so they'll usually already be, halfway in instead of starting from scratch, or instead of starting from 709. So that's kind of a nice, and some movies have like an on-set, grading as kind of like an initial grade for the dailies before going to the final DI. And that's kind of where you can control what shows up on the director's iPad, or what they see, or a level of consistency.
Okay, so you work on colors, but you also work with IT technology. You're responsible for that the post-production gets the files. So are you more a colorist, or are you more a sys-ad
I would.
from
I see
bigger IT
myself.
company?
No, I see myself as more camera department, because I think the initial work of getting the exposure right, working with the DP for stops, especially if you're on a movie and you're shooting a scene that needs to match a scene from 3 weeks ago, then you're pulling up a scene on your monitor and then working with the DP and gaffer, who are also just looking at a reference to see, are we shooting things that match the scene from 3 months ago? Or if you're doing additional photography, then you're trying to match a scene from 6 months ago. Like, you have to trust your LUT, and that's maybe it's not the same monitor anymore. Maybe it's not the same guy. So having that workflow, I find is super important for, protecting that.
So you have calibrated monitors?
Yeah.
You have actually more monitors usually than one?
Usually I do two. Usually I do two for A-cam, B-cam. And then if I have more, I'll either bring out more if I have the room for it, or I'll use a quad split. And that's part of the adapting thing. I find a lot of DITs find themselves in a situation where they just want to shove a giant cart into whatever scenario they're working in. And part of adapting, I think, is to go with the needs of the production and the needs of the set. Like, for example, on Revenant, like, we were always knee deep in snow. There's no way I was going to push a cart out, and that wouldn't make any sense. And
There's no snow cart?
No snow carts. I would just be a burden. So, so for that movie, we took everything I would have used and just built it into a Pelican case that had, batteries inside of it, so we could shut it, and wireless transmitters and receivers inside of it. And actually, Mike over there sitting in the corner was my utility on Revenant. So
he's what, a utility?
Yeah, digital utility. So he assisted me and helped me out.
Okay.
And he would carry this one case that's the entire DIT cart, and then in his other hand would be a receiver, and he would just march through the snow with me, and I would be marching through with the Iris handset, and the little monitor shows me the false color. I'd have a conversation ahead of time with the DP about what stop we want to be at, what NDs in order to remain at that stop, and that's part of adapting too.
So actually, you are not the latest leaving the shooting, the location. So he's the latest.
Yeah.
The last one.
He's the latest. Yeah. Usually in a movie, people get really surprised as far as like what I exactly do. People get surprised when they find out on movies that I don't handle the media or the data or anything like that. They usually go, "What? That's all we do in this place or in this production." My role in terms of the media on a production side would be to have a loader and communicate with the loader as far as, do we have enough mags? Do we have enough drives? Is post getting shuttle? This and this. Are the LTO tapes being burned in time for us to reuse mags? Do these requirements satisfy the insurance bond on the commercial?
Yeah.
If something happens and the insurance says, "Oh, you only had 2 cards. You've been erasing every 5 minutes. That's not okay. We're not covering you." So these are kind of
So how many copies do you do?
It depends on the movie and kind of the insurance situation. But usually, we'll make an on-set copy that stays on the camera truck, and then we'll also quarantine the cards into a safe, and then we'll send a shuttle drive off to post. They'll copy it onto their hard drive. They'll make a LTO tape, and when the LTO tape's ready, they'll send an email saying, "You may now erase cards 5 and 9. Yeah.
All right. So how big is your crew usually?
Usually, on a normal-sized movie, it'll be myself, a digital utility, and a loader. And the utility will be more on the side of on-set, helping us set up quickly, antennas, wireless power, so that when the camera fires up, hopefully, I'll be fired up. And then the loader will be in charge of the traditional camera loader utilities for the department, and as well as the media ingesting and sending the shuttle drive off.
And so Gunnar would be your boss?
Oh yeah,
or Julio would be your boss?
The both of them. Everybody's my boss. Everybody's my boss. No. The gaffer will come over and say, "Oh, let's see a reference from last week," and he's my boss, and then Julio's my boss.
By the way, I have a message from Chivo.
Oh no, this is recorded. This is recorded.
He said that don't disclose the LUT, but you can tell these people what direction to go in, right?
Right.
So from Rec 709, what direction do we go in order to make a nice LUT? Oh, not Chivo's LUT. Let's go for my LUT.
Your LUT.
What do we do for my LUT? Let's disclose. These guys came from far away. We want to give them something to take.
Okay, for an example, the LUT we have loaded here is... it's like a 709, but we took the highlights down a bit and then the shadows up just a hair and the desaturation down just a little bit, so it looks a little more real and warm and not so... I think the default might be a little punchy or a little TV or a little too colorized. So we're just kind of taking it down to kind of take the edge off.
So it's not a big change.
Not
it's
a
not
huge
a big
change.
So Rec 709, really good reference. And then from there, you're safe. You know what you're getting.
Yeah.
So the danger with LUTs is that you can go off too much in one direction, which might be cool for one scene, but then you're kind of stuck with this LUT because you're not going to change the camera on every setup. And it's nice to have something that's sort of a basic point of departure that looks right on the scopes, that can tell you about exposure so that you're not too far from exposure, right?
Right,
okay.
right.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So I think we should see what you prepared here.
yeah.
But first we ask the folks if there are questions. DRT questions, also focus please for Arthur Cho. Yes, over there.
There's a trend in Sweden, at least, that most of the post houses are hiring the ITs to have like the workflow, the overall workflow. Do you see that trend also in the bigger sets around?
I haven't seen that yet. I know in different places, the DITs, whether they come from a third-party company or the post house or just independent, that sort of changes. I haven't seen that yet, but in my opinion, whatever makes the most sense to that production. If they're putting all their eggs in the basket of the post house, then maybe that's the direction to go, so that there's that communication.
So who tends to hire you mostly?
DP tends to hire me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
More questions? Over there.
So you said there's like a basic show LUT that you generally would use, but you also mentioned that you do other adjustments depending on like the scene or the location and stuff. So how does that work? Do you do like a second look on top of that, or?
Right, yeah. So if I were to get technical about it, you have your base LUT that you can load in the camera or the LUT box. And on top of it, the thing we're grading is called a CDL. It's just like a little text file in a way, but it just adjusts the values. And your CDL is stacked on top of that show LUT. And that's a change you're making on top of the LUT for that particular scene.
So what kind of values do you change? Do you change just like exposure values, or is it also
you're changing.
color?
You can mess with highlights, mids, and lows, and then you can also do color as far as highlights, mids, and lows. So if Julio says, "Oh, let's make the highlights a little warmer," then I might just push the ball in that direction. The highlights are warmer for that scene. It gets saved in the metadata of that clip, or I name it depending on what the workflow is, and then the colorist will know to apply that CDL to that scene only.
All right.
Yeah.
I also had a question. You were saying that you can send a LUT from your computer into our camera.
Yes.
How do you do that? What is needed? Is that does it make sense? Is it faster?
The nice thing about the new things now is that it pops up on my live grade software as a LUT box. The camera shows up as a LUT box, so I can just hit load LUT, Julio's LUT, and then make a change, and then it'll save those two layers separately, which is really nice.
Is that your secret, or did we offer something to?
You did. You made it.
I wanted to.
Oh yeah. You guys invented it. I'm just taking advantage of it.
To get out of that.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a kind of a lifesaver. Yeah.
Yeah. Tonight, Jeff Boyle was saying, this is called CAP. This is actually, and he hated the abbreviation. So this means Camera Access Protocol.
Right.
And this is a possibility, for example, which is taken by Pomford to talk to the camera. So it's a kind of more open system. And before you had to run with a SD card or a USB stick to the camera.
Yeah, right. So now it's a direct communication back and forth. And on top of that, it gives me the menu, the status info. I can just see the status of the camera anytime. If there needs to be a change made and the camera's not reachable by the first AC or something, then we can do it on the computer as well.
Okay. So here in our Christmas set, have you already something prepared? Did you already set up a show LUT for us?
Yeah, we set up a show LUT. We have some brand new cameras. We have some beautiful lenses. We've got the amazing Julio. We've got all this craziness good to go.
So I think we have to see that. Huh?
Let's see it in action.
Yeah, please. Julio.
Yeah. All right, Julio.